Okay. I'm sorry, I'll start over. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. And swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Now we turn to page 2, the Action Bodhicitta Prayer. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. It's 2 words. Bodhi means enlightenment, and chitta is the heart mind, the heart mind. This is the brain mind. This is the heart mind. So our true nature is in our heart mind. It is indestructible. This is very vulnerable. This is temporary, but the heart mind is permanent. So we recite this prayer 1 time. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. And now we turn to page 5, the short refuge prayer. We take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, in the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. So we recite this in English. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And now we turn to page 6, which is the 4 immeasurables. And these are the 4 vast immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind. Bodhicitta is bodhi is enlightenment, citta is the heart mind. So we say it's the enlightened heart mind. So these are the 4 qualities of that, which are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Loving kindness can be equated to wisdom, and compassion can be equated to skillful means or the ability to actualize that wisdom. And then the joy that comes from that, and the awareness of equanimity, the awareness of sameness, all beings, all things, all the same. So we recite this prayer. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So those are our opening prayers to set, again, our motivation, our purpose for this teaching and for the practice. So the next thing that we will turn to is the book, The Four Thoughts That Turn the Mind to the Dharma. So I just sent this to Jean, so she should have that handy. Everybody else should have yours handy. So this will begin on page 1, and each section here, you will recite the section, and then there is a short contemplation after that. So you can read this quietly to yourself, or you can simply reflect on the meaning of each of these sections what it means to you. So we'll begin with the first one, which is precious human life, that we have a precious human life to be able to be here, to be able to recognize our spiritual nature, and to be able to receive teachings, and to be able to actualize the wisdom of the teachings as compassion. So we recite this prayer. The freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Oh, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When one obtains a body which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. So please take a moment and contemplate the meaning of this prayer. Precious human life, that we have this precious human life. Okay. Now we go to page 2 and 3 are read together. So this is impermanence, that our life is impermanent. Everything is temporary. We may think that it is permanent. We may want it to be permanent, but it is actually impermanent. So this is the only thing that we can count on, is the impermanence. So we read this prayer. Ka, no matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. Ka, the 8 worldly dharmas are like a painted rainbow. Think you can put your trust in them? In the certainty of death, and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire in fierce diligence. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birth and death migrators are the same, like actors in a play or a dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky, like water falling from a steep mountain cliff. It departs quickly, quickly. The nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend any time like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. And then the four worldly or the eight worldly concerns here are listed: gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace. So many of us, this is all that we really think about, are these eight worldly concerns. These four sets of opposites is what our mind is completely immersed in. So contemplate the meaning of impermanence for a few minutes now. Okay. So now we go to the next page, number 4, the suffering of samsara. Samsara is the Sanskrit name that refers to this ocean of suffering, that the world, as we know it, is this ocean of suffering. That everything that we do, everything that we are trying to do, and so on, has all this suffering potential to it. Everything is a result of suffering or something that leads to suffering. So we see that all this temporary nature is all suffering. So there may be happiness, and we may have happiness, but that happiness itself is temporary and eventually turns to suffering, not the least of which is our own life, our own body. We may have happinesses throughout our lifetime, but in the end, our body goes away and we have to leave, and there is suffering with our death and so on. So the three types of suffering are that there is human suffering, that has the suffering of change, the suffering of samsara, which means the suffering of all these phenomenal things that are happening that we talk a lot about. I know right now we're not going into a lot of detail with this, but this ocean of suffering. And then there's the all-pervasive suffering, the all-pervading suffering, that when we begin to get some transcendence, so we begin to get a point of view that is a little bit more objective, we begin to recognize the different compound natures of the suffering, what has caused these sufferings. We begin to recognize this as the all-pervading suffering. So we recite this prayer on page 3, and then we contemplate the meaning. So it says, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms, and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So contemplate the meaning of this as best you can. And tonight's talk is based on this suffering of samsara. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. So just take a moment and just contemplate the temporary nature of our lives. Contemplate the suffering that it manifests. Contemplate the meaning that because we are in this life, we have suffering. Okay. So now we go to page 5. Now we go to karma, cause and result. So these are the causes that make us have actions, or that determine or that condition our actions. And then from those actions come the results. So the word karma is a Sanskrit word that literally means action. So we recite this prayer. Even if one were a king, at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. The fruits of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding of all dharmas. Henceforth, I practice the dharma by distinguishing between what should be practiced and what should be given up. So the samsara, the ocean of suffering, is determined by karma. So the two are linked together, and we'll study that a little bit tonight. So just take a moment and just relax and think about karma, cause and result. Think about the causes that give us the conditions to take an action, and then the results that they have. Okay. So tonight is a short contemplation on this. So we have more time to talk and to explore the ocean of samsara. So if anybody has questions, you can leave your microphones on, so you don't have to be, trying to find out where how to turn your microphone on if you have questions as we're talking about. we're going to use some illustrations tonight, some pictures that I'm going to put on the screen share for everyone. And some of these illustrations might be unsettling. If you're not used to this, seeing these for the first time may be a little bit surprising. If you have ever seen Dante's Inferno, you've seen that illustration, that famous illustration, and it talks about the levels of hell and the human experience and so on like that. It's a lot like that. And that is characterizing the human condition. And the human condition for most people, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet. For most people, they are steeped in great suffering. We're very fortunate in the lives that we have. We have precious human life, and we live in a very comfortable place and very comfortable homes and so on. And we have most everything that we need, and maybe even many things that we want. So we're not suffering as bad as many other people. We have a precious human life, but we have gone through experiences that can resonate with those terrible lifetimes that other people are having. And part of our endeavor is to recognize their suffering and to have compassion for that, and to have compassion for the causes of their suffering. And through understanding the causes of the suffering, we can help ourselves and we can help other beings to be able to have the result of peace of mind. So these illustrations help us to identify that. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to let me know so we can discuss it. Does anybody have any questions now about anything that we've done so far? Okay. Good evening, Soho. Welcome. And William and Bhavani, welcome. And Katie, I see that you're with us. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you have questions, don't hesitate. I'm going to screen share now. Okay. So I presume everyone can see this illustration here. Okay. This is called the Wheel of Existence. So this is something that comes out of India and is used by the Buddhists to be able to show the 6 realms of human existence. That we have these, we go through this cycle of 6 realms, this wheel of existence. So 6 segments here. And the top segment, this is the realm of the God realm. And the God realm is not to be confused with what we might call the supreme being God. This would be the pantheon of gods that many civilizations have had through history, and maybe many people today practice and worship these different gods and so on, but they may be gods of nature, gods of lightning, gods of rain, gods of fertility, etc., like that. So this portion here represents that the top portion of this wheel represents that. Over here on this top left side, or top right side, excuse me, is the demigods or the jealous gods. So we'll talk about each of these tonight. Over here on this left side would be the human realm. The human realm. These are the 3 higher realms. Then the 3 lower realms are at the very bottom, are the hell realms. And then over on the left side here are what we call the hungry ghost realms, beings who are very miserable, never satisfied. And then over on the right side here would be the animal realm, those who are ignorant and unable to be able to change their environment. The wheel of existence is being held in the clutches of Mara, M-A-R-A. Mara represents all the demons that are within ourselves, the demon of ignorance, the demon of selfishness, the demon of conflict, the demon of attachment, the demon of ignorance, the demon of hatred, the demon of jealousy. So we will talk much more about these as we go along here. So I'm giving you an overview of what this is. So this Mara represents all of our internal demons that are conditioning what our lifetime is. Through our lifetime, we may go through all these 6 realms, at least to be able to resonate with those people who might be caught in those realms, and we can empathize with them. We can recognize them, see them, and we see that through ourselves. This is called the psychophysical drama of being a human being. So this is called samsara, the ocean of suffering. Okay. So then these actions that we take are what precipitate us to be in these realms. We're in these realms all together. You know, sometimes it may be we're 70% one thing and 10% this one and 5% that one, maybe 2% another one, and so on like that. But they're very dynamic. These realms are dynamic. They change as we change. So, but it is all part of our psychophysical drama. So the samsara is the temporary phenomenal world, and nirvana, you've heard the word nirvana before, I'm sure, is known as the liberation from the results of samsara, or the liberation from the results of suffering. So that nirvana is like the other side of the hand of samsara. So it's 2 sides of the same hand. They're both temporary. We can attain nirvana in this lifetime. It takes a little bit of work to do that, and we can sustain that nirvana. But there can be things that we are not expecting, things that can happen where that demon arises and pulls us back into our ocean of suffering. So nirvana is not permanent. Nirvana is part of this phenomenal world of being a human being. But it does speak to the transcendence that we can cultivate, and we can maintain and we can sustain for what could be the rest of our lives, if we are aware of what it is that can pull us back into our suffering, what has caused the suffering, and what antidotes we use to be able to overcome that suffering. So here is a closer view of these 6 realms. So in the center hub is this hub of ignorance and desire and hatred. And then this outer ring here in the center hub is, you see the white portion and you see the black portion. The white portion represents the ascendance of the human spirit, so to speak. And the black represents the descendants of the human into the lower realms, into suffering. So we can ascend ourselves out of our suffering, or we can move our way down into greater suffering. So this characterizes our dualistic nature. In our dualistic nature, there's always a positive side, there's always a negative side. It is part of the human condition to have this dualistic nature, and it is also part of our ability to be able to transcend that and to be able to sustain that transcendence in what we call nirvana. So here's the center hub. So we see that there's 3 animals that are used to symbolize these non-virtues. So these non-virtues are ignorance, attachment, and aggression. So the pig represents the ignorance. If you know a pig is ignorant, that it is living in filth, and it will eat in filth, it will lie in filth. It has no understanding that what it is doing is just immersing itself in that filth. The rooster is symbolic of attachment or desire. And if you know anything about barnyard animals or having chickens at home and having roosters and so on, you know that they are very territorial and very protective of the hens. So this represents desire. This represents attachment in the way that the rooster is always going around, running around, always taking care of his hens and making sure that everyone is there. And if another rooster comes into the midst of his territory, he will fight ferociously to protect his territory and his hens. And then the snake represents aggression. So a snake may seem to be very quiet and docile until you get to a critical distance from it, and then it just lunges at you with great aggression to be able to put you down, to be able to bite you, to be able to squeeze you, whatever's necessary to relieve whatever threat the snake feels is imminent to him, to whatever danger that snake perceives. So this represents the hatred. This represents the anger that we have within ourselves. So these three animals represent our ignorance, represent our desire or attachment, and represent our anger or aggression. And this is the hub of the wheel, that everything that we are doing, everything is motivated by these non-virtues. We see these are called the three root non-virtues. Then again, you can see here that with the white, you can see that there is people who are gaining in their piety, gaining in their transcendence of being able to elevate themselves to be a human being, to become a holy being. And then here on the other side, on the black side, you can see people that are falling down into the lower realms, into what could be the hell realms, and being pulled down by their demons. One of the things that we do as Buddhists is recognize that we have the responsibility for our demons. We have the responsibility to be able to pull ourselves up from our demons by recognizing what our demons are, who they are, how we have made this within ourselves becomes the medicine that we use to overcome the conditions that are precipitating as a result of being involved with those demons, letting those demons rule our lives and so on. We are the architects of our lives. We design this life. We may rationalize it in many, many different ways, but we are the ones who actually design this. We are the ones who create this for ourselves, and we sustain it. And we have to constantly maintain it and work at it like an engineer is always working on his train. You know, the engineer of a train, he's always having to feed the firebox. He's always having to regulate the speed. He's always having to make sure the steam pressure is all correct and so on in steam locomotives. So, or like a modern day engineer who is responsible for a building, a great skyscraper or something like that, that there are maintenance engineers who are making sure that the heat is working properly and the air conditioning is working properly and that the elevators and so on are working properly and all the other services are working. He's constantly engineering, making sure that everything that has been created in that building is working. So like that, we are engineering our lives. We are tending to our lives as we have designed it by being the architect. So here we're talking about, this is repeating what I just said. So here are the three lower realms, the hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. So what we are talking about here in the jewel ornamental liberation, or in the the book, the small booklet that I gave you, the white booklet, the introduction to the jewel ornament liberation, we're talking about chapter 5. This is the suffering of samsara. So in the prayer that we just recited a few minutes ago, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, we were referring to the suffering of samsara. So now we're going to investigate that a little closer. So if you turn your book to page 8, you'll see notes that are there. These are what's sometimes referred to as the faults of samsara, the faults, faults, the difficulties of samsara, of our human life, of this ocean of suffering. So here we see in the hell realm is the result of great hatred. Here in the hungry ghost realm, this over here on the lower right-hand side is the hungry ghosts, who are very miserable, very miserly, and they are there as a result of their greed. And the animal realm is on the opposite side, is this is on the upper left side here, and this is from ignorance, that they are there through ignorance, like animals and so on. So remember, this is the psychophysical drama of being a human being. So we have these emotions of hatred. We have these emotions of greed. We have these emotions of ignorance. And so we're trying to recognize this, and so that we can apply the antidotes for them, so that we can relieve ourselves of the suffering. So in these hell realms, it's characterized in this way. It says that there are 8 hot hells and there are 8 cold hells. Then there are occasional hells and there are neighboring hells. So there's 18 of these hells. So I know this is a lot of minutia of stuff to have to contemplate right out of the box. But I think generally we just have to be aware that there are these hells that are a reciprocal of what anger, what hatred that we have activated, that we have done in our lifetime. And so these hot hells might be terrible deaths and reviving that are over and over again from things that we might have done. So there's examples of, if we had caused a fire and there was great destruction and maybe people died, then in this hell, we would constantly be set afire ourselves, or we would be drinking hot molten metal, and it kills us instantly. But then we are revived instantly, only to be dying again of that same death over and over and over again. The cold hells might be terrible deaths that we have had from hurting people, from crushing people. Maybe there was a situation where in a car or something like that we did something terrible. There was just news about this just over the weekend. And killing with a car, crushing people, something like that we then become in these hell realms, and that we are constantly being crushed like 2 glaciers grinding together. And we are caught in between those 2 glaciers and crushing us to death, only for us to be revived again, and then have the grinding and killing us again over and over and over again. So there's this terrible, terrible death that we go through in the cold hells and the hot hells that is, as I say, a reciprocal of what it was that we have done in our lives. So if we have done things through demons, through this inner demon that has caused us to do these things, we may have guilty about it. We may be feeling guilty about it. It's like we're always looking over our shoulder. Is there going to be, some justice that is going to come to us? Are the police going to come to us? Is there going to be a jealous husband or a jealous wife who is going to come after us? Or is there going to be something in the courts? I'm going to be taken to court because I stole money from people or something like that. Many, many different things can happen that are causing us to never be settled, to never be satiated, that we're always in fear for our lives because of the terrible things that we might have done to cause us to be in these hell realms. And the occasional hell is an indefinite location. Maybe it wasn't a terrible thing. We may not have actually killed somebody, but we put somebody in the hospital. We injured somebody really, really badly, or we defamed some beautiful religious artwork or something like that people really worshipped and really loved and so on. So we may be caught into what might be called one of the occasional hells. Or we might be in one of the neighboring hells. Again, something that we didn't actually do completely, but we were setting it in motion. We had that motivation to do that. So there is a reciprocal hell for that. So without going in any further detail than that, you can appreciate the flavor of what this is trying to introduce to us, so that we can recognize this within our own self. Maybe we've experienced this before, or maybe we know people who have experienced this, and some people are living in hells. They may be in war zones, they may be in famine zones, they may be in pandemics, places where people didn't know if they were going to get sick in the next week or so, and then have to wind up being in the ICU for 13 days or whatever it is. So we know that many, many people suffer this way. The hungry ghost realm is the result of greed. So this is characterized by these beings who are very, very huge. They have big round bodies. They have very short legs, and they have very short arms. They have very long necks and very small mouths. So they have very poor locomotion. They have very poor ability to be able to feed themselves, to be able to give themselves something to drink. They're characterized by being thirsty and being hungry, and that they can never satisfy that thirst and hunger. So whether it's literally for food and for water, or it could be for power, it could be for possessions, it could be for notoriety. There's a number of things that people can be greedy about and be very miserly with, that they hold on to it. They do not want to share whatever good fortune that they think they may have gotten. They don't want to share that with anyone. They cause great suffering for other beings, and then upon their death or during their lifetime, they may start to suffer this miserliness, this insatiability, that they're constantly being tortured by their own insatiability, and miserable people. And you probably know somebody like that. Maybe you yourself have felt that, have been miserable in that way, insatiable. Maybe you pulled yourself out of it, but maybe you continue to suffer with that. But it is part of the human condition that we can be susceptible to insatiability, that we can be susceptible to our greediness and the suffering that causes. So then on the other side of the three lower realms is the animal realm. And here we see what appears to be this bucolic picture of here a body of water or lake, and there's fish and there's birds that are on the water and so on. And there's this landmass here, and we see different animals that would all be wild if it wasn't for human beings to be able to domesticate some of the animals. We can domesticate our pets and so on, but many animals continue to remain wild. More animals remain wild than are domesticated, and they can't be controlled. They can't be taught anything. And so they are suffering from their enslavement. They are suffering from their enslavement to just be able to provide for themselves all the time. They're constantly looking for something to eat, and they sleep very poorly. They don't sleep very deeply like we might be able to sleep, because they don't know if their life is going to be in danger, and they have to sleep, very superficially, so to speak, so that if there's danger nearby, they will hear something and they will automatically wake up and be able to run for their lives, or maybe they might confront whatever danger that is. So the animals are slaughtered, that they are controlled by human beings. They are eaten by each other. They are eaten by human beings, and that so whatever falls into their mouth, they will eat. They will try and devour, and so on. So they don't think too much about too many things. They're just looking for their next meal, where they can get meal. They're looking to be able to procreate themselves, and they're looking to be able to keep themselves out of danger as much as possible. They're constantly looking around, trying to protect themselves. We have many birds that come in our yard, and we feed the birds, but they come in and fly in, and they take a couple of seeds, and then they fly away with the least bit of provocation, because they're afraid of what might be threatening them. And their protection is their being able to fly very, very fast. So all animals have that instinct to be able to do that, and so on. So we categorize all this as being ignorant. They're unable to change. They're unable to create change for their environment, and so on. So they remain in this ignorance. So as being a human being, you may know people, or you're yourself, who have been in that state of animalistic ignorance, where all you're thinking about is selfishness of your own being able to gather your own food, being able to satisfy your own sexual desires, being very animalistic in the way that they behave and think about things. So these are the three lower realms when we refer to this. And in many of the practices and prayers, it says that by reciting the prayers and by performing the practices, we will not have to suffer being reborn into these lower realms. And so we do that. We recite these prayers and practices so that we can lift ourselves from these lower realms in this lifetime. We don't have to wait to die. We can lift ourselves from this in this very lifetime, and see that we can gain the transcendence of that nirvana that I was speaking about earlier. Those who are not able to do that, well, then they will be caught in these lower realms, and they will constantly be going through the suffering of those lower realms, and being in samsara. So now we come to, whoops, this slipped right here. So does anybody have any questions or anything about this before I move on? Is this helpful?
Well, I wonder about the intricacy of it all. I mean, it's are there therapists who work from a Buddhist perspective and help you identify, what particular realm you're in?
Well, remember, we're in all these 6 realms simultaneously.
Right. But
yes. So to answer your question, yes. And there's, Jungian therapists are very influenced by Buddhist practice. Freudian was not so much. Now, I'm not an expert in this, but my understanding is exactly what I just said, that there are many holistic practitioners who look at who look at things from a perspective of the whole being. And many of our physical illnesses are manifestations of our emotional states, of our neuroses and so on. So yeah, many doctors do practice with these kinds of things in mind. Many do not.
Somehow going back to the 84,000 emotions that you referred to before.
Yes.
And not trying to make a big deal about whether they're 84,000 or 83,000, but what is the practical use of that kind of intricacy?
Well, we look at it in one emotion at a time. We don't try and comprehend. We don't try and approach all 84,000 at one time. So we kind of build up. So, I mean, here's, 8 or 9 of us that are on the screen right now. And each one of us has some combination of those emotions within ourselves. Some are going to be the same, but most are going to be different. So we need to approach it one thing at a time. We need to break it down. We're breaking it down in its constituent elements so that we can then begin to build it up to be able to recognize, well, what am I mostly being affected by? Confession. I have a problem with greed sometimes, and I have to think, I need to share this. I'm very fortunate. I need to share this. I just got some money. I need to be able to share this money or whatever, something like that. Maybe somebody has a problem with hatred, has anger problems. Maybe somebody has jealousy problems, but they're all interconnected, but there may be a predominance of that. So we need to have a system by which we can begin to look at it at a very elemental level. Most of us don't need to go to a therapist, don't need to go to a psychologist, don't need to go to a psychiatrist. We can figure these things out ourselves when we are given the tools to know how to recognize these things.
Well, I found the discussion a couple of weeks ago about the 5 poisons.
Yes.
I mean, very, very, very informative. And I could sort of look at situations in my life and say, as I did that night, and say, man, I've got several of these things running around in here.
Right.
And I can do that at a level of hatred and envy and so on. But when we break it down, it's so finely. Of course, I'm new to this, but I just have trouble getting my mind around all of that interest.
Well, now that's a good point that you bring up, because now we're taking those poisons that you talk about, and now we're saying, well, how do they manifest in our lives? They manifest in our lives by us feeling like we're in a hell, or feeling like that we're acting like an animal, or that we feel like that we're in the God realm. We haven't talked about that yet, but that we could be in the God realm. So these are the manifestations of those poisons that you just talked about. And those poisons are the basic elements that make up those 84,000 emotions. So look at it this way. This is the stage in which this whole act, this whole drama is being played out like a stage play. What character are you playing? Any one of us, and it's not just a one-dimensional, vertical kind of a character. It's a character that has depth to it and width to it and breadth to it and so on, to make it a complete human being. And that's who we are. So I hope that gives a little bit more understanding to it, that there are the 5 poisons. Then this is the way in which those 5 poisons manifest into these 6 realms of being a human being, the psychophysical drama. The more that we meditate on this, the more that we contemplate this, the more that we begin to recognize this, to be able to look at this and see this.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question about this? Okay, well, then I'm going to move on to the next part here. So now the three higher realms. So this is where, as a human being, we would be. So I'm going to come back to the human being last, but I'm going to start with the pridefulness of being in the God realm. The gods consider themselves to be untouchable, so to speak, to use that word, that they are so much in their luxury, so much into their pleasure, that they do not pay attention to the suffering of others. They have no compassion. They have great wisdom, but they don't have great compassion. So their wisdom is for their own selves. It's a matter of their pridefulness. Oh, I'm a god. Oh, I understand all how this works. Oh, this is wonderful. And they may have people coming to them. They may have people beseeching them, adoring them, bringing them offerings, but they are so enamored with their own pridefulness that they do not pay attention. They may have the wisdom to be able to relieve the suffering of those people who are beseeching them, but they don't recognize those people. They don't see those people because of their own pridefulness, that they are so locked up in their own pridefulness. It may be recognized as arrogance. We may see it as arrogance. We may see it as aloofness. We may see it as beings who they can be any walk of life. But, the thing that always comes to my mind, and not to disparage any one of our people that are with us tonight, but those that are in the hallowed halls of the universities. What do they call it? Those that are on the great pillars of wisdom, of schools and so on. How do you talk? What's the phrase you use for that? Ivory towers. And within these schools and everything is great knowledge. But, what's that knowledge being used for? Do they have the skill to be able to actualize that knowledge? The skill to be able to convince other people, policymakers, to be able to use the wisdom that these gods might have for the benefit of beings? Or do they just as I say, they just sit in their own pridefulness, in their own ivory towers? So directly related with them are these jealous gods. These jealous gods are over here on this right-hand side. The jealous gods now, they don't have great wisdom. The gods have the great wisdom. These jealous gods have great skillful means. They have great method. They have great ability to be able to do things and to convince people, great numbers of people, to follow them. These might be industry leaders. These might be politicians. These might be financiers, people that have great power with money and understanding wealth and so on like that, who are able to manipulate people so that they are giving them power to be able to make their lives better. These jealous gods will convince these people to think that if you trust them, they're going to make your life better. These jealous gods are constantly in conflict with themselves because they want the power that the other jealous gods have. If one jealous god, say, has the following of, let's say, 6 million people, and the other jealous god, let's say, has 5 million people. Well, they each want the other millions that the other one has. They want to have 11 million people. Then once they get them, then they're going to start doing battle with those that have 20 million people and so on like that. So those are just, ways of expressing this. But the point is that they're in conflict with each other to be able to have dominion over other people that have given them their power. The greatest thing that they have conflict with in their own minds is their jealousy towards the gods. These jealous gods want to be like the gods. They want to be completely in this serene, beautiful, pleasurable existence where they're not getting any kind of phone calls in the middle of the night, so to speak, because their empire is about to crash or something like that, or watching the stock market, or being fearful that someone is going to take what they have. So this is characterized here in this illustration by this tree. You see that is growing out of the jealous god realm into the deva god realm here, and these gods are up here. These jealous gods are waging a battle with the gods. They're throwing arrows at them, they're throwing spears at them, they're doing what they can, but they don't have the strength to be able to reach the gods. The gods are completely unaware that the jealous gods are trying to do this, because that's how serene they are. They have no idea that the jealous gods are suffering in such a way that they want what the gods have. So the jealous gods are waging this war against the god realm, and totally in vain. So they're in this constant conflict with themselves. They're trying to manipulate the lower beings, ordinary beings, and they are trying to be able to conquer and become gods themselves unsuccessfully. So they are suffering from this jealousy, from envy, of always wanting what other people have. So now the human realm, over here on this left side. So the human realm suffers from desire, suffers from attachment. Humans, they have the ability to change. This is what is unique about human beings. All these other beings, the God realm does not have the ability to change. The jealous gods don't have the ability to change. The animals don't have the ability to change. The hungry ghosts don't have the ability to change. The hell beings do not have ability to change by themselves. Human beings can do that. This is why we say we have a precious human life. That's another quality of having a precious human life, is that we have the gift to be able to change. However, we can change constantly. We're never satisfied because of our desires. We attach to things and we want more and more things. Then we want other things. So the characteristic we talk about is like, we have the monkey mind, and our brain is constantly going from one thing to another, from one thought to another. Is characteristic of being a human being, that we're constantly torturing ourselves in this way through our desire, through our attachments, through our lustfulness, through our passions, and so on. And we're constantly in this desirous mode. However, like I said, we can change. So this desire, this attachment, we may desire to be a god. We may desire to be the jealous god. We may desire to be in the lower realms. So we have to be circumspective of this and recognize this so that we can change, so that we can apply the antidotes to be able to change. So we keep this in mind. So here we are again. So we're talking about the higher realms and the lower realms. So if we go back to our prayer that we recited, the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, and we look at page 4, it says, the first part of the prayer says, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. It arises in our heart that we may be caught up in this and not realize it, that we're ignorant of this. We're so ignorant, we don't know what we don't know. But this is a way of illustrating it. This is a way of characterizing it. So it may be for our own benefit that we are suffering, or it may be that we are recognizing this suffering for the sake of our family, for the sake of our friends, for the sake of other beings. And we recognize that. And that suffering then evokes a feeling within ourselves of fear and dread because of the suffering of others and our inability to be able to help them, or not being able to know what to do for them. The second part of this prayer, it says, in the 3 lower realms, and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. So everyone here, all these beings that are in these realms, all human beings, the 7.5 billion people, that they are, there's not a moment when they're absolutely happy. That with every happiness comes some kind of a doubt, comes some kind of a fear, some kind of an emotion that we cannot get rid of in our ordinary state. If we are able to transcend our ordinary state, then we can see this ocean of suffering. We can see the causes of this ocean of suffering, the 5 poisons and so on, what caused all this, and we can maintain a level of nirvana, of transcendence. However, it's still subject to being pulled back down. So because of that, there is that fear that, oh, well, maybe there's something that's going to pull me back. So the second part of this prayer, it says here, I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So what this means is this root cause of samsaric existence is caused by the things that we've been talking about, caused by the desire, the pride, the jealousy, caused by the ignorance, the hatred, the greed, and all the different permutations of those working together that make up all those emotions. So I will avoid the root cause, but the root cause is so entwined with each other, it's almost impossible to be able to get down to each one of the basic elements and say, oh, this is what the deepest part of it is. So we just say, okay, all the root cause of my samsaric existence, I don't have to know what it was that caused this. I don't have to know what the causes of this karma that has made me precipitate into this ocean of suffering. All I know is that if I practice, the next part here, it says, if I practice the excellent path of peace, I will have enlightenment. I will have nirvana. So there's a point where we reach, where we begin to investigate this. We begin to contemplate this, only to recognize that, it's in a large degree, it's incomprehensible, all the totality of it. So all that we can do is be able to say, I just need to cut it off. I just need to stop being neurotic. I have to stop being fearful. I have to stop being arrogant. I have to stop being desirous. I have to stop being ignorant. I have to stop doing these things that are causing me to remain in being like an ordinary human being. So a precious human being is one who has had the ability to be able to transcend. We're very fortunate, like I said in the very beginning, to be living where we are. Many people in this world would look at us and think that we are gods. Would look at that we are demigods, that we're jealous gods. Would look at us as being just wonderful beings because we're not suffering in the same way that they are, who are suffering at the very subsistence level. Many people don't know if they're going to make it through the day because of famine or because of war. They're going to step on an IUD, or that their house is going to be bombed out or something like that. Some people don't know if they're going to get contaminated by some disease or something like that. The threat, the danger is there so constant for them. We don't have that.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't get it seems to me that, that being the animal in the animal realm or the hungry ghost realm isn't any better than being in the demigod realm. I mean, it's just a different set of temptations that they have. I don't get one being a lower realm and one being a higher realm. I don't get the point of having the levels of the realms.
Well, you make a good point. And yes, they are all things that pull us into being an ordinary human being, that are pulling us down, that are keeping us from being able to transcend into our true nature. So in that regard, yes, they're all the same. That's absolutely right. However, again, this is all symbolic. This is help us to be able to identify what it is to be a human being, what it is to be a being, any being, a sentient being, but particularly a human being, to be able to have a way to be able to discuss this, to be able to analyze this. Will we discover this all by ourselves? Will we discover our morality all by ourselves? Or do our parents teach us a certain degree of morality? And then we go to school, and then we learn another degree of morality from our teachers and so on. And then we begin to have families and so on. And then we begin to preach our own morality to our family. Or maybe we go to churches and places like that where we learn another degree of morality. Will we learn that all by ourselves? Or are we constantly being led? We're constantly have teachers that are helping us, that accelerate our being able to understand our morality better and faster and so on. So this is just another one of those techniques to be able to do that. It's just symbolic.
Is there a remedy at each realm?
Yes.
That's different?
Yes. And we're going to get to that in just another moment or two.
Okay.
Yes. So we had talked about this, in a prior session before you joined us, when we were talking about the 5 poisons that Ed was mentioning before, and that there is an antidote for each one of those poisons. So now let's go to that and look at that in this way. I'm going to go back to the screen share. All right, so here, this is just a repeat of the things that we've already talked about. So it says, how can beings of the 6 realms be liberated? So the answer is peace and transcendence. Peace means that they are relieved from their immediate suffering. The hell realms, can they have a moment of peace? The hungry ghost realm, can they have a moment of peace? The animal realm, can they have a moment of peace? Each one of us, can we have a moment of peace where then our minds just become open, and then we can transcend, we can see the other side of our suffering to that nirvana. We can have a perception of it, that transcendence. Can beings of the 6 realms be liberated through peace and transcendence is the answer. How do we do that? Then each one of these beings, each one of these realms, let me go back to this picture. Each one of these realms here has a Buddha in here. A Buddha is not a god. Buddha never proclaimed himself to be a god, to be divine. Buddha said that we are all Buddha. We all have this potential to be awakened, to recognize what our condition is, what samsara is, what the ocean of samsara is, and to liberate ourselves. And so the Buddha is just symbolic of that transcendence of being able to be awakened, to be able to recognize that we have the responsibility to be able to liberate ourselves, just like we had the responsibility to put ourselves into these 6 realms in the first place. So in each one of these realms is a Buddha. This is a Buddha right here in the hell realm. This is a Buddha right here in the hungry ghost realm. This is a Buddha right here in the animal realm. This is a Buddha right here in the human realm. This is a Buddha right over here in the jealous God realm. And this is a Buddha right here in the Deva realm or the God realm. So there's these 6 sages, we call them, or 6 Buddhas, these 6 sages. The sages are like teachers. So here in the hell beings who are suffering from this great cold and this great heat, this great fire. So here is this Buddha who is here, and in his one hand, he has ice and cold water to be able to bring peace to those beings who are in the hot hells. And then to those beings that are in the cold hells, he's bringing this fire to be able to give them a moment of comfort, a moment of peace, so that they can recognize the Buddha who is offering this to them. They are recognizing the awakened one who is offering this to them, so that despite their intense suffering of painful death, that there is this peace of love and kindness. So this is the Buddha sage, and he has a name, Yamadama Raja, but that's not important. The point is that this being, this holy being, is giving a moment of peace to these suffering beings so that they can recognize their Buddha nature within themselves. That's the key, to be able to see that they have the ability, they have the potential to liberate themselves from that suffering. You're in the hungry ghost realm. These beings, remember, they can't eat enough or they can't drink enough to satisfy their hunger, their intense suffering of greedy miserliness. So here, this Buddha here is holding a flask that has water in it. And this illustration doesn't have it, but most illustrations like this have a box of food, so that this Buddha is offering food and drink to those hungry ghosts, so that for a moment they can have peace and they can recognize the generosity of this peace, and they can liberate themselves from their suffering of miserliness, of greediness that has caused them their suffering. And then they begin to heal themselves. They begin to apply the wisdom, the skillful means to be able to get themselves out of their hell realm, out of the hungry ghost realm. They begin to neutralize that and become a complete human being, a virtuous human being. All this is all non-virtuous. So then in the animal realm, here is a Buddha, and the animals are suffering from ignorance. They don't know anything. So the Buddha here is holding a book, and this book represents education. So here is the piece of education. So you can, with your pets and so on, you can help your pets. You can teach them things. You can domesticate your pets and so on by using a method over and over again to help them to learn to be able to go outside and use the litter box and eat at certain eat at certain times and so on like that. So it's through a process of a system of education. So this Buddha represents that educating our animalistic nature so that we can learn our morality and we can practice our morality so that we can get along with each other and ourselves. And then going to the God realms now, the God realms are suffering from great pride. They don't have compassion. So the Buddha here is playing a stringed instrument, but it can be any musical instrument. It could be an artist who has the gift of being able to draw. And what that has done, what that is able to do is to show the Buddha, or excuse me, show the gods the suffering of what it was, the compassion that it was for this Buddha to be able to learn how to play this instrument, how to sing, how to play whatever instrument it is, to be able to have the discipline, the commitment that they made, the compassion that they used to be able to develop the skills to be able to make the artwork. And maybe you've heard a piece of music sometimes that draws you to tears. Or maybe you've seen a piece of artwork that draws you to tears, that just evokes a certain compassion within yourself to recognize the suffering of the artist and what it is that that artist is trying to convey to you. So through this moment of compassion, the gods, the Deva gods, can recognize that they have been isolating themselves. They have been pulling themselves away from all other beings, and they can recognize the suffering that beings have been going through to be able to reach them. And then they can pay attention to them and they can help them. Then the jealous God realm, these beings are suffering great conflict. So we look at it as a military operation. They've got bows and arrows, they've got swords, they've got spears and so on like that, and knives and like that. So this Buddha here is holding a shield in his left hand to protect him or to protect those beings from the conflict danger that the other jealous gods are thrusting at them. In his other hand, in his right hand, he's holding a flaming sword of wisdom. It's not a sword to be able to kill those beings. It's to be able to cut through the unawareness. It's to be able to cut through the inability of accomplishment to be able to help other beings. So through the protection of the conflict and then being able to use this wisdom sword to be able to cut through that dualism that we are always in danger of falling backwards, falling back down. So this brings the peace of accomplishment so that these jealous gods can recognize what it is that they have done to themselves, what they're doing to others, so that they can liberate themselves from their conflict. And then finally, in the human realm, here is the Buddha who has in his left hand is holding a mendicant's bowl of Dharma. And this Dharma is the teaching of the Dharma, the teaching of virtue and non-virtue, of teaching what it is to be a human being and what it is to be able to transcend being a human being, to recognize the true nature that all these beings have, that we have of being peaceful, of being virtuous, of being good, of being happy, and so on. And here with this staff is so that beings can hear this Buddha coming, this sage, hear this. So there's no harm that this Buddha can have to hurting other beings. He's calling them to come to him, to be able to recognize that he has this teaching. So he's teaching this peace of letting go, of meditation, of liberation, of being able to heal oneself. So these are the 6 poisons: ignorance, desire, hatred, jealousy, greed, and pride. And then here are the antidotes: education, Dharma meditation, loving kindness, accomplishment, generosity, and compassion. So the poisons and then the antidotes. So this is like medicine. The antidotes are like medicine. So this is the wheel of existence, samsara, the ocean of suffering, Mara, the demon of grasping all this, our lives within its grasp. And that's what this represents. So this technique of teaching this goes back way over 1,000 years like this. And the teachers would travel about on donkeys or be walking from one village to another. And most of the people that they were teaching were illiterate. Not that they weren't intelligent, but they didn't have the ability to be educated. There weren't teachers and so on. They didn't have a written language at the time. But yet they could understand these principles. They could understand these teachings. And they would use these pictures. They would use these are famous pictures that are called tanka pictures. And the teachers they were scrolls that were rolled up. And when they would come to a village, they would come and stay for, a few weeks or a month or whatever it was. And they would be given like a big tent or maybe a house or something like that. And they would kind of like set up their teaching facility, and they would unroll their scrolls. They would have different ways of being able to communicate symbolically, illustratively with the people who could understand these things. And then they might even have these things that they would take these scrolls and they would be able to put them up in their tents. And as they were nomads and moving around, they would have an ability to be able to remember these picture books. They didn't have the books to read, they had the picture books to remind them. So this system is still very effective. It's a great way. That's what all these ritual objects are for, is to help us to create the mnemonics. As soon as we see one of these pictures, as soon as we see one of these statues, as soon as we hear one of these prayers or recite one of these mantras, we're automatically just transported into that true nature, into that transcendence of our ordinariness, into our true nature, into that love, that compassion, that holy mind of enlightenment, the bodhicitta. So that's it. What questions do you have? What comments do you have?
I don't think I see how you translate this into practice in your own life. Because you might, some of these faults cross over from one group to another.
Yes, that's right.
So I don't see how, therefore what?
I don't understand the question then. Well, therefore, what? What are you trying to say?
Okay. We now have this all outlined, what the various kinds of suffering are.
Well, have you felt any of that? Have you felt any of
Therefore,
those emotions yourself? Have you felt any of those causes yourself?
oh, sure.
Okay. So were you able to transcend those things?
Sometimes.
So that means that you're still attached to some of those things. You still have anger sometimes, maybe, or jealousy sometimes, or pridefulness sometimes. So the point here is that this is helping you to recognize that in its simplicity.
Well, I think that's the issue for me, is that when we lay all of this stuff out, and as you've said a number of times, this is very I mean, this represents a lot of very impressive thinking, systematic thinking. But in my life, I find the 5 poisons, I mean, a good guidepost or thing or stuff to be aware of. I particularly find this attachment and aversion.
Anger, attachment, delusion, pride, and jealousy.
Yeah, I mean, I
Muted us.
yeah, I find those compelling, but when you break them down so intricately, the utility sort of gets more difficult for me. I don't know if that's what Gene's saying or not.
Well, I think in the attachment, I'm now old, and I'm now realizing I'm not going to live forever. And so I realized that I'm sort of reducing my attachment to the things that have always surrounded me. And they're there, and I'm glad they're there, but I don't, you know, I'm ready to let them go. But my attachment to people, I mean, I have several children and grandchildren. I'm very attached to them. I don't see any way to unattach. I mean, and I don't even see the purpose in not attaching to them. I mean, there's something in this I don't get. I understand aversion, and I understand why you'd want to not have that, and I that's something I've had to work with in my life. But this attachment, it seems like there's a physical realm, and then there's the interpersonal realm, or whatever you call that.
Okay, anybody else have a comment about this? Zara, Katie, Gary, William, Bhavani?
I have something to say.
Okay, so yes, please.
I think I mean, the attachment with our family and children, I think is fine. It's just that it's a different kind of attachment. You attachment as a family member, but you should not let their whatever thing they do or to affect your emotion. You should not attach your emotion with their, it's kind of detached, but you are attached with them as a family member. You know, so I think that's a difference.
So in other words, there's a, there's that family love that we have,
Yes.
and that's a wonderful thing to be able to have that. But does that at some point become an impediment when we're on our deathbed? And that's what we're doing, is we're preparing ourselves to become pure spirit. When we give up our body, we give up our intellect, we give up these emotional attachments and so on, and then we become just a spiritual body. Are we preparing ourselves for that?
Yeah.
Because I feel that when you start to have true emotional attachment, that will prevent us from away this, it will not bring us to another place that we want to. We will still rebirth to as a human or something, because we attach to something, we hold it something.
Well, that's a good point you just made there. You said rebirth.
Yeah.
Because this is predicated on the idea of rebirth, that we have been born many times and that we've died many times, not specifically as Lance or as Gene or as Ed or as Soho, but the human experience has been this migratory experience. And we're on this wheel. And what we're trying to do is to liberate ourselves from the suffering of this wheel, of this endless migration on this wheel. And that's a very Eastern concept. That's a very Eastern philosophic point of view. The West does not necessarily have that. William has something to say.
Unmute.
Yeah, I was, I have the feeling that the only way that you can work with this is the Eightfold Path. And I'm thinking that every time we say our prayers and everything, and at some of the prayers at the end, and we say to all sentient beings, and may all sentient beings have our values and everything. And I think unless you actually do the work on yourself and learn the intricacies of your own personality, so that you can make that change. Because if you die right now and you're going into another body, you're carrying all the baggage that you still got in this life. If you don't clear some of it out, you kind of wasted the opportunities that you have this life by being
Okay.
open and
Yeah, and that's listed here in the first part of the prayer that we started with, the precious human life. It talks about, it says, may we have a joyous result. And it says, if we don't take opportunity with this now, will this opportunity come another time? Will it come again? We can't know that it will. So we have this one life in which to be able to do this.
Somehow I think of the quote from somewhere, a person cannot step in the same river twice,
Right.
because he's a different man and it's a different river.
Correct.
So it's an ongoing growth in us as individuals as we confront different circumstances that challenge us in different ways.
Correct. Yes. So that body of water represents the changing circumstances.
Right.
But in that example, our hand or our foot is the constant.
Right. Well, except we're not really, because we're different too.
Well, and that's what we're trying to recognize and trying to liberate from those differences, to totally liberate. Are we attached to what it is to being a human being? Or are we trying to become spirit, pure spirit? Is it to say that human beings are already pure spirit? Or is that a component of being a human being?
This is a leap, but to me it's related. What's the relationship between nirvana and enlightenment?
Nirvana, by definition, is temporary. Liberation can be temporary too. So there's levels of liberation, or enlightenment, and then there is what we would call, perfect liberation or perfect enlightenment, which would be the Buddha. That would be the totally awakened one. So we have to use these words, we have to use these concepts to be able to describe that. So,
Nirvana, I can slip back from, I can, as you said earlier, I can backslide from, I can be pulled out of.
right.
But enlightenment, once I achieve that, no backsliding.
Well, perfect enlightenment, the enlightenment of being a awakened one, of being the Buddha.
Right.
And you know, the Buddha here we have to recognize as a conceptual word,
Mhm.
you know, but it could be the Christ.
Mhm.
It could be God.
Mhm.
It could be Yahweh. It could be Krishna. I mean, every civilization, every culture has some kind of a name that is trying to connote, you know, that enlightenment.
Mhm.
So the freedom, you know, the basis of this is to become free,
Mhm.
liberated, to be free from any attachment, any aversion, any jealousy, any ignorance, to be free of all those things. But as a human being, it's very difficult to do that. But yet, is that what we want to do? You know, we have to ask ourselves the question, oh, do I like being whatever degree an enslaved human being I am? I'm comfortable with that and I'll remain that. Or do I want to be liberated from this? Have I had enough of this planet? Have I had enough of this life? Katie, you want to comment on anything?
I like the discussion about nirvana being something one can fall from. And from what I'm gathering through this study practice is that no matter what, the cycle continues. And I'm still thinking and discussing about the actual meaning of becoming a Buddha or realizing oneself as our Buddha nature, and then fully internalizing it and becoming that, and rectifying the definition of liberation, nirvana, and Buddha nature. So I'm looking forward to wanting and excited about learning more about those topics.
Thank you. Zara, Gary, you haven't commented on anything.
Lance, I think, and everyone, I think that just in the world that we live in, every day, at least it's the case with me, and I don't think that I'm very different from anyone else here. There are so many, how shall I say this, invitations to practice what we are receiving here. All of the poisons are ubiquitous and present among us every day. And so there can be a sense of gratitude that we have that to work with. Not that we want to see suffering in the world, but that is just a fact that we can't do anything about it. But there are poisons that we have to respond to, and those poisons are almost like an invitation to dive back and immerse ourselves in the frenzy of samsara, or to liberate us from it. And here in these studies and the things that we do here, we are reminded time and time again of the tools we have to liberate ourselves from that, and to turn in the direction ever so haltingly towards enlightenment. But every day we can view what I might have normally viewed as pain, as annoyance, and as threatening. I can view it as opportunity to be the person I want to be by practicing the things that we're talking about here today and in other places in the Sangha.
Very good. Thank you. Zara, did you want to say anything? And Bhavani, I didn't want to, if you want to say something, we only have a few minutes left. So,
Gary, I think you just were like inside my brain. I was like thinking like kind of what you just conceptualized so beautifully. I was thinking like even today, like I'm dealing with a shoulder injury, like my body's in physical pain right now, and like it's like I have physical suffering right now, but like listening to you just kind of describe like once you recognize daily, it's the opportunity to practice is like you just said, every single like transaction or interaction. And I think that for me has been the most profound thing in the last year that's happened for me, recognizing there's another moment, like the pain today I was like, this is a moment for you to recognize what's happening like in your physical body, and like just kind of like just sitting in it and like being with it. So like I like really like resonate with what you said, resonates really well with me, and like that has been a profound change for me on this journey, is saying, oh, here's another opportunity. 10 minutes later, there's another. And like just deciding, am I ready for this to transcend this particular opportunity, like each one. And the more you do it, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, like most of the time I'm able to do it, like these small interactions. And I love that you just described it that way. I think that was a beautiful synopsis of kind of the evolution of the path, at least for me. So thank you, Gary.
thank you.
Yeah,
I hope your
Lance,
shoulder
I would
feels
agree
better.
with I
Go.
would agree with what Zora and Gary were saying, is that every time we have the opportunity to see one of these poisons pop up in our mind, it's a wonderful opportunity to overcome it, to deal with it, and learn how to maybe not have it so much, to actually be grateful for that appearing before us.
I have one
Sure.
question, if I may.
Go ahead.
Bhavani, were you done? I don't
Yes,
wanna
go right
interrupt.
ahead. Yeah.
Okay. It's in the resting of the natural state of mind, and in regards to thoughts, Bhavani, thank you for saying what you did, because it jogged my memory. Garchen Rinpoche said that when you experience thoughts that you don't necessarily want to experience, or maybe feel you have aversion towards those thoughts, to give them to the nothing, essentially give them to the universe. And then Kempo has also said that they will naturally liberate. If you rest in the natural state of mind, that those thoughts that one has aversion towards will naturally liberate. So what I'm thinking about is the mind-body connection and the cycle that we are all in, as far as the body initiates thought, which then initiates a reaction in the body, and then that creates its own cycle. And from what I found, the body can feel, which creates thought, and then the thought in the mind creates feeling in the body. So that in of itself can create its own cycle. So the thought liberation process, does that eventually cease, dissipate? Is that what they're describing as far as giving the thoughts to the universe, or to nothing, or to liberate itself?
Well, let me ask you this question to try and answer your question. Do you remember the point that we would make that we have three bodies?
Yes.
That there's a physical body, an intellectual body, and a spiritual body. So you just explained the dynamic between the physical body and the intellectual body. But without the spiritual body, there's no way to break that cycle. It's the spirituality that comforts or that relieves, liberates the connection between that ever-going, that dualistic nature of the psychophysical drama, and to be able to release that into the spirituality. And that spirituality is the meaning of spirit is connectedness. And just like you said, the Garchen Rinpoche and the Khenpo Samdop said that it's when you recognize that, when you surrender more or less to that liberation. You know, it's hard to use a word without making it colored, but to be able to bring it all onto the path of the Dharma, to bring it all into recognizing this phenomenal nature as just a display of that dualism. And if we can go beyond that by becoming the dualism itself, recognizing that's who we are as human beings, but that we have something within ourselves that we can transcend that. But we still don't give up being a human being until we stop breathing. But meanwhile, as breathing beings, we have that spirituality with us. And that's what we're trying to recognize, is that spirituality within us. And we have to do that. We can't do that through wishing it to happen. We can't do it by vicarious experience of reading books. We have to experience it. And that's where it goes back to what Gary was saying about practice, that we have to practice being free. And that's the meditation. Prayer leads us there. Meditation takes us there, or is the vehicle in which we're able to get there, to be able to get to the point of being where we are before we're born and where we go before after we die.
Thank you,
So,
Lance.
you're welcome. I hope that didn't, I tried to put an hour conversation into 2 minutes.
I understand. Thank you.
All right.
I just
Well,
wanted to say that we missed Michael and Rebecca and Thomas and some key players tonight, but it's great to have Bhavani and William and Soho and Katie back. We missed you guys.
yes, indeedy. Yes. So, well, it was good to have a good conversation, and there's many turnings of this teaching. You know, the Dharma teaching, we've explained many times, is like a wheel, and it's going round and round, and we hear certain parts of it, we respond to certain parts of it. Some parts of it just kind of we miss altogether. But because we repeat it over and over again, we have time to be able to connect with it and to be able to see how, oh, that's what that means. Or I didn't hear that before, but now I've heard that, and now I can think about that. I can add that into my process and so on. So it's something that goes by, and it's, you know, in the beginning, it's all maybe very abstract, but we find that the articulation of this is the gift. This is the gift of the Buddhism. This is the gift of the Buddha, was his articulation of the spiritual recognition of the physical, or we're just tied up in the physical, psychophysical drama. But there is this third aspect. There is this third body, the spirituality that we need to cultivate the recognition of, the realization of that, the understanding, and see how that works. So it takes time. All right. Unless there's something else burning that somebody wants to say, I don't want to take you too late. You know, it's a little bit after 9 o'clock. We try and start on time and end on time. But if anybody has something to say. Okay, then we'll go to our books and we'll do our dedication. So the dedication is for whatever wisdom we have gained tonight, whatever skillful means we have discovered tonight. We are dedicating any merit that we've gained for the enlightenment of other beings. We're not selfishly holding on to it. We're trying to release. We're trying to liberate that attachment to even our liberation itself. We're giving that to other beings. So if we can go to page 20 and 21 and 22, we'll recite this. So you can recite it with me out loud. Please turn your microphone off if you do, but listen and contemplate the meaning of this as you read along. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikompa Ratna Shri, who is the Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence. This is the founder of our lineage. He's considered to be the second Buddha. So this is a homage that we recite to our founder. Then the next line says that we continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Then the dedication prayer on page 21. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas and bodhisattvas, yogins, yoginis, and dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue. Sorry, I brought 2 prayers together. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Mars, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment, Buddhahood. May the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachments to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain a supreme attainment, a Mahamudra, in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain a supreme attainment, a Mahamudra, at the time of death or in the bardo. Mahamudra is the mind of awareness, the mind, the liberated mind. We say Om, Ah, Hom. Om, Ah, Hom. Om, Ah, Hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all beings. So thank you all.
Yeah.
We'll continue next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
You're
Lance,
welcome.
you wanted me to stay on so we could,
Yes, please. Thank you.
yeah.
So thank you. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have a short conversation. We're gonna come to Dharmasuriya this weekend, so we're gonna discuss how we're gonna do that. So if you have time and can join us, it'd be a wonderful opportunity. Zara's gonna be there with her some of her family, so that became the starting point of saying, okay, let's get all together at the temple. So Zara, what are you thinking?
What would you normally do on a Saturday? Like, so I can, do you have ideas like of what would normally happen? Like
Well,
what you,
Kempo has teaching at 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock.
Mhm.
So some people would like to be able to zoom in with him for that teaching. So we could meet, like you'd say, at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon at Dharmasuriya, and we could spend a couple hours, we could see the temple, we could talk, we could do a practice, and maybe that would be a good thing to do. We could also do it on Sunday.
Okay.
The same circumstances exist on Sunday. So, so what's convenient for you, do you think?
Well, I have flexibility on either day. I have something that I do need to accomplish on Saturday with family, but because we're advanced planning, I can coordinate around what you think may be best for logistics for most people, if other people wanted to come and join on site as well. So are you using the WhatsApp text message or using, I'm just thinking, are you using the WhatsApp group message?
No, because not everybody's on that group.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So the email is the one way that we can get to everybody.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. If you think like 1:30 on Saturday, I can definitely, that would be fine for me. I can make that work and have the time now to plan in advance.
Now, as an alternative, I will say that if you want to do it earlier, it's fine with me on Saturday, but there may be people who might otherwise come would not come because they want to be part of what Kempo's doing. So, but if that became, your best time to do it, then we would have to, use that as criteria.
Well, let's just do it at 1:30 so that more people have an opportunity. So there's less.
Where are you coming from?
Manassas, Centreville, so off of 66.
Okay, so you're about a half an hour away, something like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what, you guys would have lunch or something like that? And then if you wanted, we could have tea while we're there and
Okay.
give everybody. How many people would you be bringing?
Well, so it would probably be me and my sister I know would want to come, who's I think she's been on, and potentially one other person I'm thinking would enjoy the opportunity as well.
And your sister who joined us last year.
Yeah, exactly.
What's her name again?
Katie,
Oh, she's Katie?
a different Katie, not the one that's on the group.
Well, I know that.
Oh.
That was okay. Her name
Yeah.
is Katie. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'd be great. It would be great to see her. I enjoyed her very much, and I was hoping.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to see her. And you said your other sister?
No, I have another friend I think who would be very interested. I'll connect with her. She's visually impaired. But if you think it's okay for her to come, like
Sure.
she see, okay, yeah. She's very very spiritual person. So I think she would like it.
Well, do you mind if we invite other people to come, or would you rather just have a small group and
No, I think whoever wants to come, come. I would like if Tom is around or, I don't know where everyone lives, but I know Michael lives nearby, right? He works.
Michael may be able to come and Curtis may be able to come. Maybe you're being there. We get Ed to come.
I was thinking I would love to meet Ed in person. Yeah, like if you just want to put it out there, I would love to meet everybody in person.
All right. Well, then when can you let me know so I can give everybody notice?
We can do, let's just say 1:30, like 1:30 you said, so there's no conflict with the previous teaching.
All right. So 1:30 on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then and we can be there for a few hours. And,
Yeah.
And that'd be great.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, because I'm gonna come, let me see what's going on. Yeah, so Saturday I gotta go home. I'm going to cancel all the weekend things
Okay.
because there's people with holidays and everything. So we're
Right.
not gonna do this Friday night thing. We're not gonna do the Saturday night thing.
Okay.
But there's other things that people want to do. So
Okay.
this will be good. All right,
That's
great. Well, I look forward to meeting you personally.
Yeah,
And,
me too.
I do request that everybody's had their shots,
Yeah, I've had mine. Yep.
and your sister and your friend.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
We're all vaccinated. Yes.
All right, because that's the criteria, that we request that everybody come into the center, have their vaccinations.
Yes. That's fine.
There's a lot of older folks and so on, and we don't want to open that nasty door.
I understand completely.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Well, great. I'm happy. It'll be wonderful.
Me too.
Will you need any kind of special directions, or you'll be able to navigate on your own?
I can find it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I will be in connection with you before then and we'll get everything confirmed. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Good.
It's
Me too.
exciting.
And you got my cell phone number, right? In case there's any last minute,
Yep.
hiccup that we need to deal with.
Absolutely. I do. Thank you
Excellent.
so much. I'm excited. Thank you very
All
much.
right. I hope your shoulder feels better. What'd you do?
It's a tendon. It's a shoulder tendon injury from like push-ups and tricep stuff, just silly sports stuff. And so it's like these things that you just have to have patience with the body for
It's
like
just a strain or a sprain.
yeah, it's a tendon strain. So I just have, like I don't know if you've had those, but I know you're
I
very
got
active.
one now. I've been dealing with for months.
Yeah, exactly. Which part of your body is it?
My right shoulder and my neck.
Yeah. What did you do?
I was doing yard work and I pulled in a
Yeah.
a way that I've always pulled. And now at my age, all of a sudden that becomes prohibitive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope you're doing all the good stuff you can to after 3 months, it becomes a little bit chronic, huh? The pain. So
Well, I think the physical therapist made it worse, unfortunately.
oh, okay.
So
Well,
I'm trying to recover from that, actually.
okay. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You have good and bad interventionists for sure. So I'm in the same boat as you. I'm sort of going through this rehabilitative process, and it's some days are better than others, as you probably know.
Yeah.
So
Because I want to do my exercises. I miss my exercises, and I really
Yeah.
can't do them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry, but hopefully you could get like an MRI or something, and then there's maybe you can get PRP or stem cells, like with ultrasound guidance that could help you regenerate. I don't know if you know about these options.
Well, I've been thinking about going back to the doctor and getting an
Yeah.
MRI. He
Yeah.
dismissed it when I first went to him, and then he, gave me the PT to take. So now the PT hurt me. So maybe there's something else that the MRI would see that wasn't seen otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a smart next step because now we have the technology to look for like nerve impingement on the neck, if it's coming from your neck or if it's coming from tendons. But there's definitely something you should do so you you physically feel better. So you should do it if you can.
Well, thank you. I'll
Yeah.
take your advice.
Yeah, you should do it. Okay, well, I will see you on Saturday and we
Good.
will connect soon in person. Thank you.
I'm excited. Okay.
Me
Cheers.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.